Good morning. Let me figure this out. Danny, can you hear me? Danielle, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me? Yes, you could. All right, Simcha, you know what I'm going to need? Perfect, okay. Simcha, go and get my big Gemara. I need another few minutes just to get set up. It's big, but you need both hands for it. You don't need both hands for it. Because we're in a little trailer here. You see, we don't want to wake up the neighbors. No, I can actually. Is this going to be tall enough? I don't know. I don't know if this is tall enough. I think it's tall enough. One second. Very closer. Very closer. Did I lose you guys? Danielle, did I lose you?
No, I'm here, Rabbi.
Even though I can't see anyone. Oh, I can see you. That's better. If I can see at least one person. But the image is good, yeah?
Yeah.
And the audio is good.
The audio is perfect. The image is good.
Okay, that's mamish. It's a miracle. It's a miracle.
Every
are you in the
talks, his image will show up on the screen.
Wow. See, Kevin, I'm in.
Didn't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Wow, this is freedom. If I can go to Big Bear and give a class in a little stupid trailer home, only thing is that I don't want to wake up my neighbors, so I'll find that could be a middle. I have a couple of angry people coming here. That won't be fun. No, my whole family went outside. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning, Yossi.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. Where's the Rabbi?
You don't see me?
Oh, Rabbi's not here? Oh.
I'm here. So I'm in Big Bear, so I'm in a little bit. I'm using very
in the little house. In the little house.
Keep your eyes on the road. Trust us, he's here.
Oh, I can see some. Good. All right. Was that Danielle? No.
Rabbi, a quick question on Yachol that we learned yesterday.
Yes.
Could Yachol also be about somebody who's talented, not so much that he's able to lift, but maybe it's a profession that one person knows and one person doesn't?
Tosfos clearly says that. That's what we read the Tosfos. In other words, it's not about Yachol means that, but it's about the way I'm holding it right now. If you were to let go, I would still be able to continue to hold it and to carry it.
But when you say Shnaim She'asu, let's say it's the pick or it's a artist's a crayon, you know, that two people are holding. One knows how to color and one doesn't.
That's called Zeh Yachol v'Zeina Yachol. That's exactly what it means. Zeh Yachol v'Zeina Yachol.
Not just heavy lifting.
No.
Thank you.
Well, guys, today's DAF is mamish amazing. It's the best DAF yet. It's so much halacha l'maisa. It's like, wow. All right. Hashem should help this should work. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Shabbos DAF Tzadik Hey. Before we give the intro to today's DAF, I want to refer back to what we learned yesterday. We began the sugya, the Mishnah, of someone who's cutting their fingernails. And we learned that L'kula Alma, if you use a keli, you're chayiv. So just to point out, as we began 2 days ago, that there's a machlokes Rashi Tosfos how to define malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. And we spoke out one afkamina when we started yesterday's share. We went back to Daf Ayin Gimel Amid Beis. I want to speak about Daf Tzadik Dalad Amid Beis. Now, in the Beis Hamikdash, when they would shear, when they would do goizes, they would want the wool. That was the reason for which they shared the hair in the Mishkan. When a person cuts their fingernails, most people, they don't have any use of the nails themselves, which is Taka White Tosfos, right? And Daf Tzadik Dalad Amid Beis says that when the Gemara says that when you are goizes with a keli, l'kula alma, you're going to be chayiv chatos. Says Tosfos, that's only according to Rabbi Yehuda. That holds malacha she'eina tzricha legufas like a chayiv chatos. Because according to Tosfos' definition of malacha she'eina tzricha legufa, that if you are doing something, but it's not for the same purpose for which you did it in the Mishkan, that's called malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. And according to Rab Shimon, you're pater, and we paskin like Rab Shimon, then even if you cut your fingernails with a keli, with a nail clipper, lit up Shimon, your taka won't be chayiv. So Tosfos has to say that this statement is only according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rashi says nothing. You know why Rashi says nothing? Because according to Rashi's definition of malacha she'eina tzricha legufa, which is that any act that you're doing, which is only to prevent something from happening or to take away something that already happened, that's negative, that you want to get rid of, according to Rashi, cutting your fingernails is not malacha she'eina tzricha legufa because you're bettering your fingernails, you're beautifying your fingers. So this is a bona fide malacha she'tzricha legufa, which is why Rashi doesn't have to learn that goizes with a keli is chayiv only l'das Rabbi Yehuda halacha l'maisa. Since we take a paskin like Reb Shimon, still if a person cuts their nails with a keli, they will be chayiv chatos according to Rashi's interpretation of malacha she'eina tzricha legufa. Oh, another very important intro, before we begin the intro. When we spoke about the goidelas, goichelas, and poisekes, first of all, to clarify, poisekes, I said yesterday, is to comb the hair, to comb the hair with a comb. And I think it was Danny that asks, we already spoke about that, and that's a problem of you're going to be goizes. And what we are talking about here is clearly not goizes. That was the sugi that we already began. All right. The Gemara asked that mishumai mechayva. All right. So poisekes, again, Rashi brings two interpretations. To better word it, it's parting the hair in a certain way that it beautifies the hair. It's like braiding, which is why the last thing we learned is yechayv mishum boina, because you're building up your hair. You're making it's not about organizing the hair by combing it, but it's about parting the hair, that the hair should have a certain style, mamish like braiding. And just to begin today's intro, when we are discussing mishumai machayva on the goidelas, koichelas, and poisekes, and as we're going to have today many other activities, and the Gemara is going to want to know from what av does that come from, it's not just a theoretical question, but according to many Rishonim, this is a sugya, my friends, that we learned extensively on Shavuos, but it's a shas sugya, which is the sugya of hasra'ah. Don't forget that Shabbos, chayv chatos b'shoigeg. If a person, God forbid, did that activity, b'mezid, on Yontif, the chayv malchus, on Shabbos, the chayv skila. But in order for Beis Din to punish someone, they need to have a forewarning. One of the details of hasra'ah, one of the many, is that you have to be told, what sin are you going to be violating? And it's interesting that when it comes to Hilchas Shabbos, it's not enough for the warner to tell to the potential sinner, you're violating loisasu voi kol malacham. That's not enough. It's too generic. You have to tell the person what av are you going to be violating. That's a huge thing. And that makes this whole sugya a lot more halacha l'maisa. So when the Gemara began on Daf Tzadik Daled on the base, right, by the goidelas, koichelas, and poisekes, mishumai mechayva, it actually means what hasra do you have to give? On the premise that you have to mention the correct av. This is a very important intro to today's daf, because there's going to be an exchange that is very difficult to understand without this piece of information. And we're going to speak it out when we learn the Gemara. And with this piece of information, we're going to understand a Gavaldic exchange just in a couple of moments. Okay. Having said all that, the final intro connected to yesterday, we ended off by saying that koicheles mishum tzayva'as. So we already mentioned that after the shiur when we went on in Zoom, makeup. This is the sugya of makeup, even though koicheles means putting on eye makeup, but it refers to putting on all makeup. And someone asked after we finished the shiur on Chabad.org, hold on, makeup by default is einoi miskayim. So how can we say over here, let's go to the final sheet, that you're coloring, you're dyeing, but it doesn't last. My friends, that's correct. And I want to correct, I made a mistake when I said yesterday that you chayiv chatos. You're not chayiv chatos. Putting on makeup is an isun midrabanon. That's important because it doesn't last. And having said that, now this will also give us a better understanding in this whole sugya of according to some, right, this non-oil-based powder that some people hold it's kosher to put on Shabbos and on Yontiv. The reason why it's even less problematic, it's not even a midrabanan, because it's not even ein miskayim. If it has no oil base, now we're not paskening that way, but those who say that you have these special Shabbos lines, it's mamash powders, and they really don't last. You put them on and they last garnished maybe an hour. The reason why it's not even asur midrabanan, because even on a rabbinic level, it has to be somewhat miskayim. Like makeup, it's talking about ein miskayim for 24 hours, but it's going to last a couple of good hours. Masha'enkein, if it's b'chlal not miskayim, it's not even ein miskayim, it's not even asur midrabanan. Okay, now we're going to continue on Daf Tzaddik to learn many other tuldas. We're going to have braisas. We're going to have discussions against what ab are they linked to. We're going to have also milsa agaburcha, that when you have a Talmud whose scholarship is to be improved, this reflects bad on his Rebbe. Now, it goes without saying that God forbid if one's Yira Shamayim, that we have an achrayis, right? We have the schos to be called Chasidei Chabad and Shluchei Chabad and Talmidim of the Rebbe, Mikusharim of the Rebbe, that not only Avada the Yira Shamayim reflects, and in the positive that when we are better, it reflects better on the Rebbe, but even scholarship, if there's a lack of that, it doesn't reflect positively on the Rebbe, as we will learn in the Gemara today. We're going to speak about, just for an example, machalev, which is milking. Milking, I know today we don't live in the farm, but this is also connected to women that are nursing, and it's common that a woman, aside of nursing, it's very uncomfortable or painful for her. There's too much milk in her. How does she remove that milk on Shabbos? That's an issue. We're going to learn that machalev is connected to mefarek. Mefarek means extracting. All right, we already had this a few times up until here, just to speak out that there are 6 different shittas what mefarek is a tulda of. We're going to learn Rashi that mefarek is a tulda of threshing. Mefarek is tulda of dash. And again, l'mayin afkemina, that when you give hasra, according to most opinions, you can't say, don't do mefarek. You have to say, don't do dash. We're going to learn about merabetz. Merabetz is that when you have earthen floors, then for the dust not to rise, they would sprinkle the floors with water. And that might have, or that will fill up the little crevices in the earthen floor. And therefore, we already learned before, that's boina. If you straighten out a floor, that's the problem. Many people learn that merabetz is only us and midrabanan, because maybe there aren't any real holes in the floor. If merabetz is only us and midrabanan, because it might be mashva gumais, since it was something there was a great necessity to be merabetz. Sometimes you would be in an environment that would be very dusty, and you couldn't breathe. So we're going to find an example where the Chachamim allowed for us to do a ha'arama, as we'll speak out. Even though we know really we're doing merabetz, but we're making believe ke'ilah we're not doing something else at the same time, and that will be l'chatchila muter. And we're going to start the new Mishnah, noch an Tzadikei Amud Aleph, that's going to speak about the rules of a otzitz nakuf versus an otzitz she'eina nakuf, a perforated flower pot versus a non-perforated flower pot, even if the roots are completely in the pot, but since there is a hole either underneath or even only in the side of it, according to most Tanoim, imagine, the plant is also deriving nourishment from the earth in the ground through the hole. The moisture, the lachluchias of the ground goes up into the pot, and that will lead us into, can you pluck out a plant from that pot? All right? May you do that. Is it a Isur Deraisa? Is it a Isur Derabanan? Very much like today, if you have a vase, and you have a flower in it, it's just in water. By us, it's not perforated. The water is going to leak out. Can you take a flower out? That will lead into that sugya. But we're going to have the great opportunity to speak about many hilchos tumah v'tana, specifically regarding being mevatel a keli. So if something is a keli, has a halachic status of a utensil, and it becomes tamei, so either take it to the mikveh if it's made out of metal. If it's made out of earthenware, you cannot take it to the mikveh. But if you halachically break it, since it's no longer a keli, it automatically becomes tahor. Now, what does the word breaking it mean? How large of a hole must there be in the keli for it to lose the status of a keli? And we're going to have a Rava at the end of today's stuff that's going to compile various dinim, and he has the statement that chamesh midos bekelim, there are 5 measures regarding perforations in a keli, which will give us a gavaldik kitzur and compilation of all of these halachas of how are you mevatel a keli, with many, many more beautiful details. Let's start. That was a long intro. We left off on DAF Tzadik Hey Amud Aleph. We are 6 lines from the top of the Amud in the beginning of the line time. Okay. Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. All right. Goideles, a woman who braids her hair. Koicheles, a woman who paints her eyes, makeup. Poisekes, she splits her hair in a specific beautifying way. Even, this is the way we're going to learn, even according to the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. What did Rabbi Eliezer say, my friends, in the Mishnah? That she's chayiv, Rabbi Eliezer mechayiv, as we have been learning, whichever one the av is. However, if she does it for herself, she's patur. La'atzma patura. Just like we have been learning that when you do something shaloi kedarkoi, it automatically downgrades it a notch from an Isur Deraisa to Isur Derabanan. If you do something in a way that you cannot do it properly, anything that cannot be done properly automatically is not an Isur Deraisa. And this is behemshuk to the last thing we learned yesterday, that it was Hashem that braided Chava's hair. Why did God braid Chava's hair? Why couldn't she braid her hair on her own? Because you can never properly braid your hair on your own. The whole business of people putting on makeup on others is because someone else has to do it for you for it to be done properly. And so holds the Tana, Rab Shimon ben Eliezer, Bishitas Rab Eliezer. When you do it yourself, you're patur. It's only lechaverta. That is where Rab Eliezer holds that Yitaka Chayiv Chatos. And Vaited B'chein Hoy Rab Shimon Elazar. Clearly, this is not Bishitas Chachamim that to begin with, it's only Asan Midrabanan. No, that there's an Isur Deraisa. That Isha Loisaver Serek Al Pameo. Right? This is in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, that a woman should not put rouge, again makeup, like a chelas, on her own face, and this is a lashon that she should not do it. It implies that Isur only midrabanan, and he's saying that she cannot put rouge on her own face, according to Rabbi Eliezer midrabanan. That's the takaraya. That when did Rabbi Eliezer say it's Asur D'Oraisa? When one person puts it on the other, and again, the logic is that when you put it on yourself, since you cannot do a perfect job, it's automatically downgraded from an Isur D'Oraisa to a Isur D'Rabanan. And now, behemshech to these 3, and the whole debate, what is it a tulda from? We're going to learn many other activities which are tuldas, and there's going to be a discussion as to what av does it come from. Tana Rabbanan. Ha choyle, one who milks. Here we're referring to an animal. Ha machabetz. So there are 2 shitas and Rashi. What machabetz mean? We're going to teach the first one of Rashi, that a person who is placing coagulated milk in a keli in order for the whey to be separated from it. That's mamish boirer, right? You're doing an action which will separate the whey from everything else. And the third activity, which is hamegabein, you are making cheese, right? Making cheese has to do with the process of pressing together curds, all right? So you're like building, the Gemara will speak out, all of these 3 are asur, and since they are all related to food, there is a minimum amount related to isurim of food, which is kre groi geres. Okay, and again, we'll see in the Gemara what these 3 are a tulda from. Weiter says the Braisa, another group of 3, ha mechabed one who's sweeping the floor in the house. We're speaking about dafke, a dust, a earthen floor. That was something very commonly done. They would sprinkle water on a earthen floor to make sure that dust does not raise up. Third, one who's removing honeycombs from a beehive. So says the Braisa, Shagag, the Shabbos chayv chatos, and he's it be yomtiv loika arboim. Even though we didn't speak that much about yomtiv yet, on yomtiv there is no skila, and therefore the rule is, as we learn in Krisus, when you chayv chatos b'shoigig, if this would have been done b'mezid, you would have been chayiv katos. But if b'mezid you chayv malkis, then b'shoigig you're not chayiv chatos. On yomtiv there is no skila. Not Yom Kippur, Yontif, there's no skila, there's no kares, and therefore the punishment is malchus. Now the big shaila here is, hold on, some of the things that we mentioned are connected to oichel nefesh. Oichel nefesh is muter on Yontif. What's the problem? They're huge issue. So the third Tosfos speaks about it, and towards the end, I'm just reading a few words in Tosfos. It's getting late. In Mamish, the last few narrow lines. For Oimeri, the ikalo oikme beroida samach hashaycha. A big doichek. I mean, all of the Rishonim grapple with this challenge. You're taking out the honeycombs at such a late time, Yom Tov afternoon, that there won't even be enough time for you to eat it on Yom Tov. So we're limiting the chiyuv malchus on Yom Tov. But let's go back in the Braisa. So these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. The Chachamim say, "Echad zeh ve'echad zeh einoi ela mishum shvus." Guys, we're going to learn pshat that the Chachamim only say shvus on the latter three. On Mechabed, Merabetz, and Roidim, that even the Chachamim will be Moide, that on the first three, Choylev, Mechabetz, and Megabein, here there is a Isur Doraisa, as we will learn. Now here's the story. Rab Nachman ben Gurion, he went to the city of Nardo, and when he got there, Baruch Hashem, a Talmud Chacham came to the city. They asked of him, Choylev, we learned this Braisa, right? To milk an animal on Shabbos, you're chayiv from what? Mishuma machayiv. And again, let's learn pshat here. Shumai mechavi means when you give a person a warning, what the premise is, you have to give them a warning based on what av are they doing, what av, or the next one. So he says mishum chaylev. Mishum chaylev means that Rav Nachman was the shita that if you give a person a hasra'ah and all you mention is the name of the tulda, that is a bona fide hasra'ah. That's why he says if a person is doing chaylev, what do you warn him for? From chaylev. Then they ask the machabetz. Right, the way we're learning, you're separating the way. Mishuma machayiv. Mishuma chabetz. I use the same word. Migabein mishuma machayiv. So he said migabein. Now the people who asked the question did not accept this premise. They thought that you have to give a person asra based on the av. So basically, he was telling them nothing. Why are you chayiv? He said the same word. So so they told him this reflects bad on your teacher. That the Rabbach, dein Rebbe, your teacher. He was a reed cutter. Reed cutter means they were not using a derogatory profession. There's never a derogatory profession. All it means is that he either didn't spend enough time explaining things to you, or he did not have the capacity to explain things to you. If you don't know, it means your Rebbe didn't know, and it's not good. And again, we're learning the reason why Rav Nachman himself, Rav Nachman Bar Guri, didn't explain is because he held you didn't need to connect it to an av. Hasra is enough just quoting the Tulda. However, now that they told him that you have to, they wanted to know the Av. He himself never knew the Av. So, another good thing, if you don't know, ask. And they told him, milking is mishum mefarek. Mefarek means extracting. A very important Rashi, 17 lines from the top of the Amid. Look inside Rashi, mefarek. Kemoi, mefarek, masoi. Extracting means like taking down a burden. You're taking the food out from the place that it was gathered. Okay, so it doesn't have to be taking something off a place where it was connected to, but when there were two things, one was inside the other, and you extract one from within the other, that's called mefarek. And what is mefarek connected to? Zatrashi, Bahave, Toldois, Dash, Oigevalt. Oigevalt meaning, like I said, there are 6 different Shitas. 6. We actually, I think it was on Daf Ein Gimel. Daf Ein Gimel on the days that they're invited. That Rabbi Tam says that Choylev Dash is connected to memachek. Think about that. Memachek means that when you milk an animal, you are smoothing the udders. It's mamash amazing how each tradition says something else, and we'll leave it at that. Okay. So again, Rashi holds. Here's the Rashi and Daf Tzadikei that mefarik is mishum dash. So mechalev is mefarik. Mefarik is the tulda of dash. Mechabeitz chaya. All right, the way we learned, you are separating the way from everything else. That is easy to understand. That's connected to the av of boirer. And megabon, the way you make cheese is by putting, right, by pressing different shtikalach of curds together. So that is mishum baina. You're building. Now, even though, especially Shitas Rashi holds that there's never binyan bekeilim, obviously yesh binyan ba'oichlin. Everyone is a huge chiddush. Okay, weiter. The next three in the brayso was hamachabe, sweeping a floor, hamarabit, sprinkling a floor, and haroy dechalus devash, right, taking out honeycombs from a beehive. So the brayso said shagak b'shabbos chayv chatos, right, and he's a beyontiv like arboim divrei Rabbi Eliezer. So Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Nachamal, here we have again. The Amoyed Rabbi Eliezer is coming to expound. My Talmud Rabbi Eliezer. What's the chiyuv chatos? And he's focusing specifically on removing honeycombs from a hive. A hive is not mechuber lakarka. What exactly are you doing? So he answers, says Rabbi Amoyed Rabbi Eliezer, since it says regarding Yonason that once Vayitpol Oisa, that he once dipped his staff inside honey, and he ate the honey. And the Torah, the Nach, refers that act of dipping, biyarois hadvash, right, into a forest of honey. Now, forest of honey, why use the word forest? V'chima in yad eitzel dvash, and that's a remes alolei malach ma yad. Just like when it comes to a forest, that's like a bona fide act of detaching, of koitzer, because it's mechuber lekarka. Even when it comes to a beehive, av chalois devash, that you're taking out of the beehive, yes, you're chayv chatos, it's a tool of koitzer. And obviously, now you understand, especially the way we are learning, that the chachamim only argue on the latter three, that the chachamim hold it's taka aser midrabanan. And we're going to have that in the next Mishnah also, right? Removing a flower from a vase, or from a vase, even though it's not mechuber lakarka, removing it. I'm not talking about moving the vase. I'm talking about removing a flower from it is asur midrabanan, but it's not asur d'oraisa because it's not attached to the ground. Okay. Ameimar shara zilcha b'machayzer. Machayzer was a wealthy city, and the Rav, the Paisik Ameimar, the Mordechay Asra, allowed people on Shabbos to sprinkle the floor with water. And Amar, now he, first of all, follows the shita of the Chachamim. The shita of the Chachamim is that it's only an Isur Midrabanan. Time Amai Amar Rabbanan. Why is it Taka Asur Midrabanan? Dilma Asi Lashvua Gumais. Because unlike sweeping, that's the way we learn Pshat. When you sweep for an earthen floor, a dust floor, or earth floor, for sure you're going to straighten out the holes. Even when you're sprinkling, there might be a hole, and you might level it out. And if that happened, then you were violated by them. So it's a perhaps, maybe, Issa the Rabban Gezerah not to do by them. And over here in Machayza, like a Gumais. The reason why there was no Gumais is because Machayza was a wealthier city, and they had their floors made out of stone. It wasn't made out of earth, which was a Chiddush in those days. And this, because of this story, we bring it back over here. Can you sweep a floor nowadays? Many poskim say that if your entire house, like our houses, it's stone, it's wood, but there are no gumais that are going to be filled, especially if it's stone, then it's less of a problem. Okay. And by the way, the reason why Rabbi Eliezer, the Tanach Rabbi Eliezer, will say it's asur d'oraisa would be because this is important, because he holds that even if you won't be mashva gumais, since you swept the floor, it's MERCAVA patish. Since you sprinkled the floor with water, MERCAVA patish, you made it perfect. Making anything perfect, it's a finishing touch, is an issur by the Chacham disagree with that. They don't call this MERCAVA patish. It's only because it's Gzeira, and therefore he allowed them to do it. And based on that, says the Gemara Rava, where the Bach adds Rabba, Toisfa'a, Ashkechel Ravina. He once found Ravina on Shabbos to come at Stein Mahavla that he was having a hard time because the dust was raising up and he had a hard time to breathe. Or the Amri law that it was Markashisha, the son of Rabbi, that he once found the Amayra Ravashi, that on Shabbos he was trying to learn, trying to the Shabbos, and to come and stay in Mahavua. So Amalei, Loisaber Lamar, Lohada Tanya, did you not, don't you hold of the Braisa, that a Reitzel Rabbeitz is based on the Shabbos? And based on our learning that the sprinkling is only a gezeda that you might be mashvagumi. So it's only an isur midrabanan. And here the person has a lot of tsar. And there are times that the chachamim, the makim tsar, they allow you to do a ha'arama. They allow you to make a zalupo. Don't you hold what it says in the Braisa that mariba, maybe ariba shomelei amayim, bring a basin full of water. V'reichitz panav b'zav yezu. Wash your hands in one corner, wash your feet in another corner, or wash your hands in another corner. In other words, use the water the permissible way in each location in the house. When you happen to be washing your face, some of the water falls on the ground. You're washing your face. It happens to be that you're sprinkling the ground. This is a bona fide legal loophole. And the Braisa holds you can do that lechatchila on Shabbos. So why are you sitting here in Sar? Why don't you have someone, or you yourself, use this loophole? So Amalei, whether it was the latter version, it was Ravashi, whether it was the first version, he tells him, Lav adatoi, big machlok is what this means. Either Lav adatoi means, oh, I forgot about that. Thank you for letting me know. Or Lav adatoi means, I knew about that Braisa, but I don't agree with that. Now, since there is a Gezerah Midrabanan, doing Harama is going to be usher. So that's two ways of learning Pshat in the Gemara. Tana we learned in the Braisa, based on this statement, that since we're going that reboots is we paskin like the Chachamim, it's only usher Midrabanan. Shema Gezerah will be mashvagumais, compounded with the fact that you have a lot of tsar. So they allow for you to do stuff in the house with water that is mutter, even though b'derech mamela you're going to end up sprinkling a lot of water all over the place. So Isha Chachama, a woman who's learned, Merabetzas based on Shabbos, she knows how to do reboots in her house. Vehoidna, the Gemara concludes, all based on roivates, is a gzeira because you might be mashvagumais. So now, guys, hold on a second. This is a davar she'ein mischaven. You don't want to be mashvagumais. You want for the dust to settle. And therefore, it must be that our whole conversation was only in the Shittas Rabbi Yehuda, that Taka holds, davar she'ein mischaven is going to be davar she'ein mischaven is going to be pater abel asu, which is talk about the Chachamim hold. It's asu midrabanan. And again, by the way, according to the Tanach Rabbi Eliezer, even though it's a davar she'ein mischaven, but it's a psikresha. Psikresha makes it asu d'oraisa. But anyways, coming back over here. Since all of this is a davar she'ein mischaven, so now that will put the whole layer that according to the Tanach Rab Shimon, like whom we paskin, a davar she'ein mischaven is v'chatchila muter v'hoidna d'sfiron k'Rab Shimon. Shari, we are allowed to do ributs. We can be meravetz. We can sprinkle water on the floor. Our goal, our intention is to make sure that the dust stays down. It might also be mashvagumais. That was not my intent. And davar she'ein mischaven is muter. So indeed, we can be meravetz the floor on Shabbos. That's not so much negi halacha l'maisa for us, because we don't have today so much earthen floors. We don't have floors made out of dust, made out of earth. But if you go camping on Shabbos, if there's no grass and you can't breathe, then indeed, being merabet, just to keep the dust down, is something that's mutter according to our Gemara. Okay, moving on to the next Mishnah. And this is opening up a whole topic of Tumah Bentara. We have a perforated pot in which people plant. It's called a perforated flower pot, Atzitz Nakuf. And then we have the Atzil She'ein Nakuf, we have a non-perforated pot. The Gemara here, the Mishnah here won't discuss how high off the ground must the pot be, but there is a certain height that once the pot is within that height, even if the hole is not under the pot, even if it's only on the side of the pot, according to some Tanoim, according to the Chachamim, that whatever grows in the pot is halachically growing from the ground. So says the Mishnah, Hatoilish, if you will detach a piece of plant that is growing in a otzitz nakuf, says the Chachamim, you're chayiv. Oh, says Rashi, just to read the words of Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Hatoilish munzagam chayiv, the have kimechuber, the yoinek min hakarka al yedei haneker, shemeiriach lachluchias hakarka. And now she makes a point. Vafilo hanekev is bedoifnoi. Doesn't have to be that the nekev is underneath, even if it's on the walls. If there's a hole, since what grows inside is also deriving nourishment from the ground, lachachamim it's called detached. Therefore, toilish yochayv. However, v'she'eino nakuf, if you detach something that's growing in a flower pot, but the flower pot is not perforated, then you are only asur midrabanan. It's patal avul asur, right? It's taka pater because it's mechzek toilish. Something is growing. Something is growing. You're detaching it, but since it's not connected to the ground, again, it's only asur midrabanan according to the chachamim. And then we have the Tanach of Shimon, who holds poiter bazeh u bazeh gavaldik. In other words,
Rabbi,
let me just finish. This little amount of nourishment halachically is not significant, and therefore none of it is connected to the ground, and therefore you're only violating an isur derabanan. Yeah, what's the question?
at this point, do we have any idea where the perforated pot is sitting vis-a-vis the ground? Is it on the ground? Is it above the ground? Or we don't know yet?
So even above the ground, and there's a whole discussion how there is a certain height limit that once it's beyond that I mentioned, then it's not deriving nourishment, but that's not going to be mentioned here at all. But it does not need to be sitting on the ground. Right. Says the Gemara, Romalei Abayil it up. Or the Amrile Barav asked it up. And he's asking regarding the Shita of Rab Shimon that says it's not considered attached. Now we're going to jump to another inyan. The other inyan is regarding Hechsher Zeroyim. If something that is detached from the ground becomes wetted with any one of the 7 halachic liquids, right? Yod, Shachat, Dam. Let's speak about just the Mayim. So then it now is susceptible to becoming Tamei with many conditions. The water has to go on that item with the willingness of its owner, v'chulei, v'chulei, and obviously after which a source of Tumah has to have a halachic contact with the produce. But if the produce is still attached to the ground, even though it's wet, even if a source of Tumah touches it, it's never going to become Tamei. And now we're going to apply how that works, v'negeya, something that's growing in an atzitz nakuf, atzitz lit up shimon, can it become mukhshir or not? It's mamish connected to the sugya. We learned in the Mishnah, Rab Shimon, poiter b'zel, right? You know, he's quoting our Mishnah, Alma kum techais, that Rab Shimon holds nakuf lit Rab Shimon, kishe'ein loy nakuf mashvile, it's mamish unperforated, as we explained. However, v'neminu, we're quoting a braisa, Rab Shimon oimer, ein bein nakuf l'she'ein nakuf chevre daf tzadik hey, amid base turn the amid, elo lahachshir, Zeroyim bilvad, oy gevalt. He says when it comes to the dinim of hechsher zeroyim, right? If there is something in an atzitz nakuf and it became wet, garnished, it means nothing because it is considered attached to the ground. If something is in an atzitz she'ein nakuf, even though it's growing in the flower plot, so what? It's not considered connected to the ground. So if it becomes wet, whether it's still wet, whether later it got dried, and a source of Tumah touches it, it will become Tamei. So Rab Shimon certainly does differentiate between an Atzitz Nakuf, the She'ein Nakuf, Gavaldik. So Amalei, so here comes a Rabbi, right? Or Rav, whichever one was asked the question to. Amalei, hold on. Yes, use our Mishnah, L'chol Mili. Our Mishnah is not only Shitas Rab Shimon by Hilchas Shabbos, but our Mishnah Shitas Rab Shimon for everything else other than the dinim of Hechsher Zeroyim. What does everything else refer to? Chavru, look inside Rashi, the 4th line from the top of the Amid, L'chol Mili, L'Shabbos, V'liknois b'meshicha v'loi b'kesef, Gavaldik, huh? How do you acquire something? So that's the whole sugya that we have, the series of Mishnais and Kedushin. And there is a huge difference between something that's considered metaltalin versus something that's considered karka. When it comes to karka, kesef is kaina. When it comes to metaltalin, however this evolved, but nowadays metaltalin is not, the kinyan is not finalized with kesef. You need to do mashicha. So according to Rab Shimon, if you have an atzutz bein nakuf, bein she'ein nakuf, that itself is always called metaltalin. It's not called mechuber. When it comes to hilchas kinyanim, you want to make a kinyan, you have to do a kinyan of mashicha. According to the chachamim, you would do a kinyan on atzutz nakuf. You want to make a kinyan with kesef because it's considered bona fide karka. Whereas Rab Shimon's din in our Mishnah isn't only for our Mishnah, and now she gives other examples. Let's go back into the Gemara. Rab Shimon could tell Shmash Relay. However, there is one exception, even according to Rab Shimon. Vishani le'inyan tuma. Since the Hatoida Ripsa Tohara Eitzel Zerayim, the Torah added this susceptibility, the potential for something to become tamei when it comes to Zerayim, as we have a pasuk in Shemini, Mamasha, it looks like there are extra words. When the Torah is speaking about the a source of Tumah, right, a nevela or the shiratzim that falls, I'll call Zera, Zerua Asher Yizoreya, on any sowing of seed that is sown. In other words, if it's in order for it to become muksher, it has to be ready to be planted. If you have to do a halachic act of detaching it first and then to plant it, that's not asher yizoreya, and it's not going to become susceptible. So because of this extra limud by the dinim of hechsher zerayim, Rab Shimon is moida that if something isn't an atutz nakov, it is considered mechubar, which is advantageous because it will not become mukshed even if it becomes wet with any one of the 7 halachic liquids. We're not done yet. Now we're going to further expound Shitas Rab Shimon. There was an elder, again, Tosfos and Chulin says, Chulin Davav, that when we speak about an elder stam, it normally refers to Elyahu. Be that as it may. It was the Sava that asked of Rab Zera, Shoirish keneged nekev mali omar Rab Shimon. I get it. That Rab Shimon holds, right? We're speaking about Hilchos Shabbos, that even though there's a perforation in the pot, it's not considered attached. Rab Shimon is lenient. Again, guys, it's not muted, but it's not also midoiraisa. You're not detaching. What happens if the root of this plant is mamish aligned with the hole? It's not somewhere in the pot. It's not going out of the hole. Guys, if the root goes out of the hole in the ground, then of course it's called attached. But if it is aligned with the hole, the Sava holds that maybe even Rab Shimon will be Maida, since it's facing the ground, it's considered mechuber, even for Hilchos Shabbos. So he asked that question of it, right, directly facing, and Rab Zera didn't know. So you don't know, he was ishtik. Now, okay, that didn't bother the Sava, so Rab Zera didn't know. What bothered him is that he came back later, he came to hear a class of Rab Zera. And Rab Zera's teaching that Rab Shimon beautiful. Means if you have a pot, that this keli loses its status of a keli because it is broken. Now, broken can mean broken can mean cracked. We're going to learn these details later. Here, the breakage is because there is a hole. How large of a hole must there be in a keli for it to say, now that it has azag roisalach, it's no longer a keli? So I know that we learned the Rambam. We are very familiar. We should be familiar with kamoitze rimain. If the hole is so large that a pomegranate goes out, our sugya is going to mention soon the moitze rimain, but we're not going with the standard of the moitze rimain. Here, dafke, we're going with the shita, which is more lenient. Which even if the hole is large enough, only kamoitze zayis. That means if an average aleph can go out of the hole, which means the hole is a little bit bigger than the zayis, that is mevatel the keli. The keli is halachically considered a non-keli. Now, chavra halkop, what do you use the seichel now? If there is a plant, but the keli is not a keli, so then Rab Zera is saying even Rab Shimon will consider now this plant, yes, attached to the ground. See, if the plant is in a keli, the keli is mafsik the plant from the ground. Either is a hole, and taka for hilchis hechsher tuman tara Rab Shimon, because of the extra word asher yizoreya says it's considered mechuber, but that's the exception. Otherwise, Rab Shimon says it's in a keli, you're your own keli, you're not connected. But if the keli loses toiras keli because it has a whole kamoitze zayis, then even Rab Shimon is moide, it is considered mechuber. Now, guys, the Sava goes on the premise that if the root has direct exposure to the ground, because the root is facing the hole, according to the Sava, that it's logically more considered to the ground than the keli only halachically not being a keli. Chavra, the Hals cup, important this. So the Sava was upset. He tells Rab Zera, if you're telling me that you know for sure that according to Rab Shimon, if it loses Teiras Keli, then it is mechuber, then for sure you should have said that if the root is directly opposite the hole, which means it's directly exposed to the ground, then Rab Shimon for sure should hold that it's mechuber. The fact that when I asked you that question, you didn't have an answer, which means you taka don't know, it could go either way, then you for sure should have had the suffix, even if the Keli lost Teiras Keli. So let's read it inside. Amalei said the Sava to Rav Zera, Hashta shoyrish keneged nekev, still boyim inach, you still had a boyim. When I asked it of you, you didn't know, which means you agreed you don't know, it can go either way. So nekev, nikev, if there's a hole that is takamitayr the keli, no one is debating this din right now. If a keli became tamei, earthenware keli cannot go to the mikvah. However, if you break it, it automatically becomes tar. How do you define breaking a keli? Again, kamoitzi zayis. Amoida, that if the keli became a hole ibchtei tarasai, if you had a doubt by direct exposure, then for sure you should still have a boya, whether Rab Shimon will say it's mechuber or not. How can you be certain over here and still have a boya over there? You can appreciate the chassidus of all this. In other words, we all want to be mechuber. We want to be connected to God. The more yeshus we have, azich bin akeli, boom, that disconnects me from the ground. If I have a kleina lechele, then according to the Chachamim, I'm connected. Now we're learning, no, according to Rab Shimon, according to the Rashbi, that's not enough of a bittul. But here he's saying if you're completely a non-halachic keli, then Abzeda is saying, then you are considered mechuber. And the Sava says no, the Sava holds that if that would be the case, even if the Bisnach Alza Keli, you're not bottled yet, but you are directly aligning yourself. You have direct exposure to godliness. The Sava felt that should also be connected to the ground. And your Rab Zera, you had a boya by me, and you're making a statement bavade by you. So Abaya now further clarifies the statement of Rab Zera, which the Sava will accept. We're going to go on that even if there's direct exposure, there's still a doubt whether the Tanach Rab Shimon will hold it's considered mechuber. However, when was Rab Zera certain that according to Rab Shimon, if the keli loses Teiras Keli, then for sure that whatever is in it is vadai considered mechuber, which is a chumrah, which means that if you detach it on Shabbos, it's going to be chai v'chatos. Amar Abaye v'itmal had Rab Zera hachi hu de'itmer u'mayde Rab Shimon she'im nikav lamato ameriviis. If the whole kemoitzi zayis in this keli isn't stam hold, it isn't only that there's a hole in the keli ubemela it loses its Teiras Keli, but there's another detail. If the hole is so low in the keli that it now can no longer hold a revius of mine. What does that mean? These are gavaldik edinim, and every now and then we have the opportunity to review it. If I have a keli that became tamei, so again, if it's made out of materials that can be taken to the mikvah, gesund to hate. Independently, if it breaks, it's no longer a keli. The advantage of breakage, bringing it to the state of tahara, is certainly by klei cheres, because the klei cheres can never be taken to the mikvah. So at least shaviras and zel takanos. Now hold on. My keli is tummy, right? I have done my grace coffee jug. This is a klei cheres. And let's say kamoitzi zayis. Kamoitzi zayis. So if it became tummy, the keli is tummy because it's we're all tummy to mutumas meis. The shiach comes this moment. I'm going to undergo the hazah shlishi v'shvi after the mikvah, after everything. We're good to go. Here you can't. What happens with this? If a hole is made kamoitzi zayis, now this is going to become tahar, but the keli now is called halachically a gistere. The word gistere in Aramish means a broken piece of earthenware, a shard. Is a gistere a keli for itself? No one is debating the fact that the moment it's kamoitza zayis, it becomes tahar. What happens now if the owner, if I decide, you know what, I'm not going to throw this in the garbage, since it at least can hold a revius of mayim. Okay, so I can't put my coffee until the top, but it can at least hold a revius. I now plan to use the broken keli, weiter. My kavana to use this gistera is going to be makes it chashuv. Umikanu lahaba, it's considered a keli. It's not that the original tuma comes back, but now that I remade it into a keli through my machshava to use it, if something tummy touches it, it again becomes tummy because it's a keli. If this klei cheres First of all, it lost its tumah because there is a whole kemoitzi zayis. But you know where it lost it? It lost it so low on the walls that now that it has this hole, I can't even use it to put a revius of mayim. This shard is halachically considered so unuseful that even if I decide to use the shard to carry a half a revius, batla daitoi, I can never be machshav the gistera. This gistera, I can use it, but it will never be called a keli. It will never become tam. Okay, so based on these dinim, clarifies Abaya that there are two types of a keli becoming batel because there is a whole kemoitzi size. If it becomes batel, but it can mikano lahaba still hold the revius, I agree with you, elder, you Elyahu Navi, that there should for sure be a suffix lit up Shimon just because it's batel from the tumah went away, but it's still called a gistera. It's still a yesh. You can designate it for it to be a metzias for itself. And then a chanami, there should be at least a suffix. If there was a suffix in your case, for sure a suffix here. But when did Abzeda say bevadai that even according to Rav Shimon, the keli is so batel that whatever is in it is considered in the ground because there is no keli. That's if the keli has the kemoitzi zayis that mikano lahaba it cannot even hold a revius. It doesn't even have the status of a gistera. This makes sense. Even the Sava will agree. In such a case, it's so non-keli, it's so bottled that whatever is in it is considered connected to the ground. And therefore, yes, you're chayav chatas if you detach from that keli. How great is that? Okay. So now that we mentioned the concept that you can have a keli, you can get broken, but it only takes away the status of the tumah that was on it in the past. But then there's a new din of a gistera. Now we're going to make a compilation of all different steps. Amar Rabba, that chamesh midos bichlei cheres. Chamesh midos means that there are 5 different measures of how broken does a keli have to be for it to change, for a din to change. What din? Many different dinim. And there, he puts together the totality of the dinim will be 5. And let's go through one by one. Yaval. So number 1 is niket kamoitzi mashka. If you have a kli cheres, you have an earthenware keli, and became tummy, for example. And now there is such a small hole, the smallest hole, halachically, is a hole through which water can seep out. Guys, it's interesting. When the smallest of holes allows water to go out. But for waters to go in, by putting it in a larger bowl of water, even when there's a certain amount of pressure, the hole has to be a little bit larger. All right? So there's a shiur called kamoitzi mashka, and there's another shiur of koines mashka. Let's not confuse them. So the smallest halachic hole is if it's kamoitzi mashka, if there is a hole in your cup, if there's a crack in your cup, but it's so little that mashka won't even drip out, halachically it's not a hole at all. But if it's kamoitzi mashka, then tahor militami gistera. This is interesting. If you have a bona fide keli, guys, if I have my cup, even if my cup has a hole kamoitzi mashka, not kamoitzi zayis, kamoitzi mashka, my cup will not lose its tumah because people will still use the cup. They don't want liquid to drip out. They will put a plate under the cup. They will put a gistera under the keli. But if I am beginning with a gistera, if I have a broken shard to begin with, and taket, like we said just a moment ago, that a gistera, if you decide to use the gistera to hold mayim, and it can take a hold of the revius or more, your machshava, it makes it into a keli. But now if the gistera gets a hold, kemoitzi mashke, it loses that tumah. Because no one will use a gistera if it's leaking water out. You know, people put a gistera under a keli, but you don't put a gistera to a gistera. So since most people, enough people that even if you plan to do it, you're batla daitoi, there it's not used anymore. It loses toidas kelin. If the gistera already became tamei, it loses its tumah because it has kemoitzi mashke, and likewise bikanu lahaba. If a source of tumah touches it, it will not acquire tumah. Guys, are we good? Good. However, even though kemoitzi mashke takes away the tumah of a gistera, but va'adayin keli ulekadosh ve'mechatas. But if you have a bona fide keli that never lost its status of a toidas keli, not a gistera, a proper keli, even if it is kemoitzi mashke, not only does the keli not lose its status of a keli, that keli is saying a chiddush can even be used to gather mechatos, which is mayim chayim, to make the ashes of the red heifer to sprinkle on people to bring them tahara, which is a huge chiddush. Because here there's so many standards of tahara, and the mayim has to be mayim chayim. You would think that the keli in which you put the mayim chayim has to be perfect. If it's such a little of a hole, the keli is even good to be used again to prepare mechatos. Number two, larger hole will be if nikif kekainis mashke, if there's a hole in a keli, which is not only large enough for water to go out, but it's even large enough for water to seep in, which means the hole is a little bit larger. Now, this was not mevatel the tuma in a keli, but at least from now on, it was mevatel this keli to be used to prepare taka mechatos. Tohar melekadosh by mechatos. Tohar, guys, it's ironic. Tohar doesn't mean it's pure. It means it's not valid. It's no longer good. It's no longer fit to be used because it's not a real keli anymore. However, but if you have something planted in it, and what are we learning? And even let up Shimon by Zerayim, that if it's in an atzutz nakov, it's considered attached, right? But if it's not perforated, it's already considered detached. If something is detached and it gets wet, now it's mukshet. If something is attached and it gets wet, it's not going to become mukshet. If a keli has a hole, even though it's as large kekainis mashke, it's not considered attached in the ground. And therefore, if water touches it, it will be mukshet. Verstehst? Because it's not considered attached. Now let's go into the third level. Third level is nikev kishoidish katan. If the hole is large enough that a small root could go out through it into the ground, so now it's considered attached. Tohir milahachshir by zeroyim. And like many the Shainim point out, my friends, this is even according to the Tanach of Shimon. I know Rashi doesn't say that, but most of the Shainim say, because we just learned that even Shimon is Maida, because of the extra words Asher Yisorei and Parsha Shmini, that for this we consider it attached, and that brings about a leniency, because since whatever is in here is considered attached, because the hole is as large, like a shaydish katan, therefore it's mechuber lekarka, and it's not susceptible to becoming moshe. However, if this keli became tamei, you can't say, now that there's a hole, that a root can go out, you were mavatal the keli. We don't say that yet. Va'adayin keli hilikabel zaysin. But number 4, that's the kemoitzi zaysin that we spoke out. But if nikev kemoitzi zaysin, says Rabbi, even if the keli was already tamei, now it's tahar. Umikano lahaba, before you designated to use this broken keli as a gistera, it cannot be makabel tuma also. Which means it lost its tuma to anything that's associated to the shiur of kemoitzization, which is the keli being tied or tamei. However, if the person has a keli and it has a whole kemoitzization, and now you say, you know what, I'm going to use it for pomegranates, and the pomegranates are larger, they're not going to go out of the hole. If you had that machshava, then mikano lahab, it's considered the keli. But now the biggest share, if nikev kamoitzidamayim, even if you decide, I have a big bowl, and the bowl now cannot even hold pomegranates because there's a hole larger than the pomegranates are going to fall out. You know what? I'm going to use it for watermelons. Here again, we say batlo daitoi, that if your keli cannot be used even for pomegranates, it's not considered a keli. New designation will not help anymore. However, even if you have a keli that has a hole, it will still be a keli for the following din. Right, Pashas Chukas. If there is a mace in the house, and the mace is metame through the oil, and you have an earthenware keli, and as we learned, an earthenware keli only is mekabel tuma, milagav. If that keli is covered tightly with a cover, summit puzzle, even though there's a hole in the keli, so the airspace is open to the house, even if the hole is kamoitzidimain, since the mouth is covered with a proper covering, there's a summit puzzle, it protects the items that are in it from receiving tuma from the mace. When will this keli that has the summit puzzle not be able to protect anything in it? Not when there is a whole kemoitzi imoin. No, it's still called a keli for that. Only if roiv of the keli is missing. If it's 50% there, and there's a cover on the top, even though an entire wall is missing, 2 walls are missing, it still protects all of the items in it. It's only Yachi Praches Rubai Gavaldik. Okay, so these are the 5 levels to which, let's close up the sugya. Rav Asi tells Rava, Shamaiti, I heard, and guys, when we learned the Rambam, that's like the way we paskin. We never heard the Kamoitzi Zayis that often. Shamaiti Klicheres Yuri Kamoitzi Rimain, for it to lose its tumah. Amalei Rava says, no, I heard that. But you're confusing it. Don't give the standard that only when the keli has a whole kemoitzi rimon does it lose its tumah. No, that shiur is only regarding mukav summit puzzle, only regarding what we just mentioned. But Rabbi just mentioned it regarding roiv. If you have a keli and it has a whole kemoitzi rimon, even though it's covered, now items in it will become tamei because it's kemoitzi rimon. If it's less than moitzi rimon and it's covered, even though it's kemoitzi zayis, items in it will become tamei, and that's the din of moitzi rimon. But the problem is, Rabbi just contradicted himself. Rabbi just said before that kemoitzi rimon, even if it's kemoitzi rimon, if it's covered, it's still keli enough to protect the items in it from being makabel tumas oil. It's only if nifchas rubai. Who the Amri just said that some will pass at nifchas rubai. So the Gemara says no, like kash. Turning to Tzadik Vav. That when did Rava say that if you have a keli, even though there's kemoitzi rimon, since the cover, the mouth is tightly fastened, it protects all items in it from acquiring tumas meis oil. That is beravravi. That is if the keli is very large. Now, how do you define large? We don't know. The Gemara is not saying. The latter statement of Rava that he's limiting Rav Asi's din of kemoitzi rimon, that is where the keli is bizutrei. If the keli is small, that is where we say the shiur that even though it's kemoitzi zayis, the keli is already not a keli. But if it is fastened, it at least protects the food inside of it. And now, if it becomes kemoitzi rimon, it doesn't even protect the food inside of it. But if you have a large keli, even if it is kemoitzi rimon, as long as the mouth, as the opening is covered with a tzamid puzzle, all items in it will be protected from tumas meis. So bekitzer, my friend, I just want to speak about the kemoitzi zayis, kemoitzi rimon, al pi chasidis. Zayis, we learned this so many maimorim of the Alter Rebbe. Zayis is bitter. Zayis is connected to tshuva. In other words, what are we saying? That a keli does not allow me to be mechuber. But if I do one act of tshuva, a bissel fabitir, then I'm not a keli in a good way. Now I'm mechuber. The kemoitzi rimon is always used in Chazal. It's not enough for a person to do tshuva. If you want to be connected, you got to do good things. And as we have a hayom, that one good deed is better than 1,000 kerechten. So bekitzer chevre, we have to figure out al piruchnius how to be mevatel our keli to be better mechuber, a lot more to be continued.
Rabbi, back to Chaylev. Back to Chaylev. Don't aren't cows milked on Shabbos?